Welcome to meeting number 21 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Agriculture and Agri-Food, pursuant to order of reference of Wednesday, February 24th, 2021, and the motion adopted by the committee on February 25th, 2021. The committee is beginning its study of Bill C-206, an act to amend the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act, qualifying farming fuel. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of January 25th, 2021, and therefore members could be attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. Proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind all participants to this meeting that screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. To guarantee
a smooth sailing of this meeting, I would like to give you certain rules. Before taking the floor, wait for me to call out your name. If you are taking part in the video conference, please click on the microphone to unmute yourself. I would like to remind everyone that observations by members and witnesses must be addressed to the chair.
Welcome our witness, Member of Parliament for Northumberland, Peterborough South, and sponsor of Bill C-206, Mr. Philip Lawrence. Welcome, Mr. Lawrence, and we shall give you an opening statement of up to 7.5 minutes, and you can start right now. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is an honor and privilege, friends, to join you at the Standing Committee of Agriculture and Agri-Food to speak about my private member's bill, Bill C-206. It has been a pleasure throughout this private member's process, especially as a new MP, to get to talk to farmers and stakeholders from coast to coast to coast. And you know what? In talking to farmers, nearly all, in fact, every farmer I talked to supported Bill C-206. And after all, we have to remember that our farmers are the backbone of our communities, the engine of our economies. They work early mornings and late nights to put food on our table and clothes on our back. They have continued to ensure that throughout COVID-19, and that really, in fact, any time in recent history, our food supply has been protected. While we have battled the pandemic along with the farmers, they did not pause their work. They have continued to plant their fields, feed their
Mr. Lawrence, sorry, I guess there's sound issues. Madam Clerk, did you want to
Yeah, it seems that the mic is not selected in the Zoom screen.
Okay, yep. No, my apologies. That's my fault.
Did everybody hear it? And is there an issue with translation? I think it's on.
Yeah, oh, now we cannot hear anything. For the translation, the interpreters have his speaking notes, so they're able to translate.
Yeah, and I think I've resolved the issue now. So can everyone hear me now?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yes.
So continue on, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, our agriculture industry accounts for almost 7% of our total GDP. They are more vital to our economy than many might realize. We are the fifth largest importer or exporter, in the world of agriculture. The agri-food and agriculture industry employ 2.3 million Canadians. That's 1 in 8 jobs in Canada. We are one of the world's largest producers in flaxseed, canola, pulses, and oats. And while the farmers' work has been unwavering, they have faced many challenges, known colloquially, of course, in August of 2019, the autumn of 2019, as a harvest from hell. They've also faced some global trade wars, which have reduced their markets. In addition to that, they've been fighting the pandemic along with us all. Some of those barriers were unpreventable. However, one that is very controllable and that where we can help Canadians is that they currently bear an inequitable share of the burden of the carbon tax. The Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act, as it currently allows, does allow qualifying farmers to an exemption on certain farm fuels such as gasoline and diesel. However, it fails to extend that exemption to other fuels such as natural gas and propane. This is challenging on many different fronts, as farmers quite often don't have other options, that their only option for their particular industrial equipment may be natural gas and propane. And the science actually says that natural gas and propane are often cleaner fuels than diesel or gasoline. And so why would we not include them in this exemption? Farmers, after all, are stewards of our land, and along with our Indigenous people, were some of the first environmentalists standing up for the land and also for the animals and the plants located on their properties. Farmers have been leaders in environmental technologies. They've led with such technologies as no-till to prevent soil erosion, or precision-led, satellite-led agriculture that reduces the use of fossil fuels. And in fact, Canadian agriculture industry has already achieved net zero decades ahead of many other industries. Beyond the fact that the carbon tax presents a significant cost to our farmers, it has tremendous pricing barriers for our farmers as well. Many times, our farmers are price takers. And so, unlike other industries, they cannot simply just push on the carbon tax to the consumers. They absorb it themselves, which can be a make or break for many of them, making them uncompetitive in some cases. And we've seen the result of higher taxation on farmers as farm debt has doubled in the last 20 years. Farmers are struggling now, Mr. Chair. Farmers want to reinvest in our communities. Farmers want to spend money at the feed stores, at the tractor dealerships, and at local restaurants to keep the rural economies flowing through these very difficult times. Rural Canada needs more support, not more taxes. Our farmers deserve a break. Bill C-206 aims to fix what is seen to me, to put it generally, as an oversight in the initial carbon tax legislation. By expanding the farmers' exemption from the carbon tax, we are securing their continued innovation in environmental protection. We are securing the protection of Canada's food supply. We are securing the livelihood of farmers. What may seem like an insignificant amount of money to the government may very well be make or break for many of our farmers. I have personally seen bills of carbon tax of tens of thousands of dollars. This is having a tremendous impact on our farmers across Canada. In closing, Mr. Chair, I would just like to thank the farmers for everything they do. Conservatives will continue to advocate for farmers and common sense solutions. I hope to see this time not just all parties, but all members support Bill C-206. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. And now we'll go to the question round. And to start us off for 6 minutes, Ms. Leanne Rood. Go ahead, Ms. Rood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, I'll be splitting my time today with Mr. Steinley. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence, for appearing today on your bill. As you know, I spoke to your bill, so I'm interested also in hearing a couple of things that maybe you didn't touch on in your bill. And of course, you said this bill is going to help farmers, and this is on-farm use. This is something that will actually directly affects their bottom lines. So my first question is, does this bill extend an exemption for farmers for heating their barns with propane and natural gas?
Thanks very much, Ms. Rudin. Thank you for your support. Really appreciate it, and the rest of the members who supported the bill. And so we want to say that the tone that we want to strike in this is, of course, one of collaboration. And so we would welcome amendments. No, currently it does not include barn heating, but that is something we would like to work with the committee and to increase the scope of this, as we want to continue the tone with this legislation of openness, transparency, and collaboration. And I am certainly open to any and all suggestions that will help our farmers.
Thank you very much. And so my second question, and I kind of alluded to it at the beginning, is I'm just curious if you've been hearing from farmers, like I have in my own riding of Lambton, Kent, Middlesex, the difference that this will make to their profit margins if this change were to be made, and the viability of their businesses going forward.
Yeah, and we've certainly seen a number of agriculture stakeholder groups, including those out in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, who have shared with numbers ranging from 8% all the way up to 12 or even 15% of the net income will be impacted. And as powerful as those numbers are, it's much more powerful to me when I actually talking to farmers and saying the impact. And like I said, I have talked to many farmers. I don't have an exact count, but many, and not one of them has indicated that they don't support this legislation. And I might say these are farmers who support the Green Party, the NDP, the Liberal Party, and the Conservative Party of Canada, and they've all agreed that this bill is something essential and something that they want.
Thank you very much. I will defer the rest of my time to Mr. Steinley. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leanne, and thank you, Mr. Lawrence, for being here. It's going to dovetail into my questions. I have someone familiar to this committee, the Agriculture Producer Association of Saskatchewan, and President Todd Lewis did present to this committee on the capacity growth. And they did a release in January 2021 saying about the carbon tax. It's not good news. It's a significant hit. It's pretty significant when you're talking about $10 an acre on average annual basis. What's so important about it is that it's not expansive. It directly affects our bottom line. So the APAS's numbers say by 2030, because of the carbon tax, the price could be $12.50 per acre. This cost is carried entirely by farmers and affects their bottom line. So in your bill, this is something that is very important to producers in Saskatchewan. And can you elaborate on, have you talked to APAS, and are those numbers that he's talking about reflective of farmers across the country?
Yeah, and those are we've talked to agriculture stakeholders across the country, particularly those, of course, who would be affected by the federal change in the carbon tax. But nearly all of them, they said that this will have an impact. And one of the things I'm proud of with our private members bill is that we've seen a real change in the dialogue. Initially, of course, the government said that this was insignificant and there wasn't a need for a solution. However, we've seen a marked change in even the way that the government is discussing this. And so nearly, I think it's a consensus now that the way that the carbon tax is currently structured unfairly impacts farmers, of course, those who are working as hard as they can every day to deliver our food supply.
Thank you very much. Obviously, this is something that we're doing because right now it's not an option to repeal the carbon tax. Repealing the carbon tax is what we hear out in Saskatchewan as the first choice. But thank you for bringing this bill forward to have some easement of the cost being borne by Saskatchewan producers. Some people will say, well, people get a rebate, producers get a rebate. And what's the big deal if they're going to get the money back that they're putting forward? Although we saw recently that lots of people in provinces across this country received less of a rebate than they paid in carbon taxes. So my question would be, if there's going to be a rebate, which is going to be some of the arguments of our colleagues, why would you take the money in the first place if you're just going to give it back? And most of the time when the government gives a rebate, it's not as much as that they have paid in the first place. So have you heard some of the producers talk about a rebate, and is their feeling very similar that if you're going to give the money back, then why take it in the first place?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sorry, I think my internet's a little bit broken there, but hopefully you can all hear me all right. Mr. Scott Ross from the Canadian Federation of Agriculture, I actually had the opportunity to interview him on the Finance Committee, and his position was our membership has been pretty clear that their preference is for an exemption, and then I can read in not a credit. So I think it's pretty clear that the Canadians would just rather keep the money in the pockets of farmers as opposed to it going to Ottawa and then coming it back. Sometimes that money, it gets stuck in Ottawa, and why would we not just go ahead and leave that right in the pockets of farmers?
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence and Mr. Steinley. Now, Mr. Ellis for 6 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Ellis. You're on mute. Mr. Ellis.
Having trouble with technology again today. It's only taken me a year to figure this out. But thank you, Mr. Lawrence, for showing up at the committee today. And it's a pleasure to have you here today. And as you know, our ridings border each other, so we do have a lot in common. And it's great to see you again, as we've run into each other many a times. Quick question, Mr. Lawrence. Can you give us some examples of eligible farming activities under the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act?
Certainly can, and I'm just going to flip my.
Sorry, you're breaking. Yeah, you're breaking up big time. Sorry.
Is that on my side there? Sorry. Can everyone hear me now?
It's kind of rough there. Try it again, Mr. Lawrence.
Okay. Is it any better now?
It seems to be. Give it a go.
So eligible farming activities, if I can just flip to the definition here, include the operation of eligible farming machinery on a farm for the purposes of farming, the operation of eligible farming machine for the purpose of going from a location or farm to another, or a prescribed activity.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Are you aware that your private member's bill does not add grain drying and barn heating as under a section of the bill entitled eligible farming activities?
The definition of farming is not exhaustive, and it actually doesn't currently include planting of crops. So if we just wanted to go by the exhaustive list, there would be nothing covered by this exemption, and clearly that's not the case.
Okay, so your answer is no, I guess, in that sense?
No, my answer is what my answer is.
Okay, so in the chamber, you've indicated that you believe eligible farming machinery includes the equipment used for grain drying. Are you aware of Clause F in the same section of the legislation, which states eligible farming machinery does not include F property that is used for the purpose of providing heating or cooling in a barn or similar structure?
Correct.
Okay.
But
go ahead, sorry.
But that does not, of course, include grain drying.
Okay. So when you drafted your private member's bill, did you consult with any legislative experts in drafting of the bill?
The House of Commons provides drafting experts, and they did concur.
They did concur.
Actually,
okay.
They drafted it.
They drafted. Are you aware of any options to improve the energy efficiency or switch fuels for grain drying?
I am aware that there are some in the workplace, but there's not any, in my understandable and talking to numerous stakeholders from coast to coast, there is not currently one that is financially viable.
Okay, thank you. That's my time.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Monsieur Perron, pour 6 minutes.
Mr. Perron, you have 6 minutes. Mr. Perron. Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I'll begin by thanking Mr. Lawrence for the care that and concern that he's demonstrated towards the agricultural industry. I truly appreciate the intention behind this bill, that he's taking care of the people who are feeding us. Mr. Lawrence, you raised doubts. I'd like to make sure I understand correctly. The bill will apply to the exception for the propane used for grain drying. Is that so? Is that correct? Hello?
Lawrence, did you hear the questions? Mr. Lawrence, it seems
Monsieur Lawrence est parti là.
I believe we've lost Mr. Lawrence.
Difficulty, Mr. Lawrence, with your connectivity. With your connectivity. Are you okay? You can give it a try. Did you hear the question, Mr. Lawrence?
I did not.
No, I didn't hear the question.
Kind of breaking up also. The voice is breaking up. I'll just leave. Madam Clerk, are we... You want to do a sound check on that? Do we want to try it again, Madam Clerk? Are you getting Mr. Lawrence clear? So it seems like so Mr. Lawrence, you did not hear the question, right?
Correct.
Okay, let's give it a try again. Vas-y de nouveau.
Go ahead, Mr. Perron. All right. Just to make sure, I'll start. The clock starts at 0 again, right? Yes, of course. Of course. We've got our finger on the clock. I'll begin again. I'd like to start, Mr. Lawrence, by thank you for the interest that you've shown to agriculture with this bill. No matter what the final result is, I believe you're doing this for the right reasons. I'd like to ask a question. Just now, when speaking with our colleague, there was a question where the answer wasn't clear. Does the exemption in your bill apply to grain drying and barn heating?
All right, I think we're back here. So I hope everyone can hear me. So to be clear, it does apply to grain drying. It does not apply to barn heating, but we're open to an exemption on barn heating there.
Est-ce que la traduction se fait?
Is translation being provided? Yes, I have interpretation, but the interpreter said she's having trouble understanding Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Lawrence, perhaps you could position your microphone closer to your mouth or speak more slowly. Could we go ahead? It appears that his screen is frozen again.
The transmission is really bad, and it's freezing on and off. And I think you're connected on Ethernet, Mr. Lawrence. It seems to be the best. It's going to be hard to continue this this panel because there's really bad connections, Mr. Lawrence. I don't know if you can hear. I know it's frozen again, but
yeah. Could you possibly, Chair? I apologize. Could you suspend just?
I heard the word suspend. We can. We lost you. We lost Mr. Lawrence. Madame Greffiere, do you?
Madam Clerk?
For now, okay, I'll suspend the meeting and let the clerk work out and see if there's a way we can reconnect Mr. Lawrence, and we'll be back once we hear back from them. Okay, we'll just suspend for a minute.
I swear I had nothing to do with it.
Allez-y.
L'horloge. Mr. Parent, go ahead. How much time do I have, Chair? 5 minutes. Okay, that's what I was going to suggest. Mr. Lawrence, let's begin again. So you're telling me that grain drying is covered, but not barn heating. So this bill does not apply to a specific fuel, but to an activity, but rather both. Is that right?
Exemption underneath the current act with respect to for qualifying farmers for both. Right now, it is for gasoline and for diesel from barn heating. So currently, as Mr. Ellis rightfully pointed out, barn heating and cooling is not it's not included in the act for diesel and for gasoline. So when we amended the act to include natural gas and propane, it's not included in the barn heating as per se. So so the amendment that we would welcome, quite frankly, and would look forward to is including barn heating as well.
OK, parce que je vois quand même là.
Okay. I can see that there's an issue with regard to farm production. For example, a grain producer would be exempt, but not a chicken breeder. Now, I have some concerns, many concerns, in fact, with the unequal way the Canadian market works with regard to farmers. In Quebec, we have a carbon market that's set up with California. So there is an exemption, but other provinces, such as BC, has an exemption. Can you tell us about the distinctions between provinces? What about standardizing this system? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, and it's I think farmers find it way too complicated just in general. And when we look at sort of the carbon taxing and other and really other types of regulation, it's so terribly challenging. I mean, you look at some of the agri support programs, and they themselves are difficult. And it's amazing the amount of paperwork and professional advice that's required. And then, yeah, whether you're filing your income taxes, whether a farmer is preparing an HST return, whether a farmer's preparing their carbon tax that they owe at the end of the year. These just make farmers less and less competitive and take them away from the things that they're great at, like planting fields and growing livestock.
Okay. Monsieur Lawrence, est-ce que vous...
Mr. Lawrence, do you have any data on alternative energy? I think that all committee members want to act to limit greenhouse gas emissions as much as possible to slow climate change, but this has to be done intelligently. There needs to be alternatives. Have you identified alternatives that producers could use, for example, to heat their grain? Do you have any ideas, or should we study this in committee?
I actually think that's a great thing to study. I have heard from stakeholders that currently there aren't economically viable solutions. However, what I would say to that is that perhaps the opportunity to help farmers in this and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which I agree with the member, I think every member wants to reduce and wants to fight climate change, is not through using the stick of an inequitable carbon tax and the way it's applied, but just make the carbon tax more equitable, and then fund innovation. And so leave the money in the pockets of the farmers. And trust me, if you've ever met or worked or been a farmer yourself, these are amongst the most thrifty, environmentally minded, sustainably minded human beings on earth. And if you give them the proper resources, I'm sure that they will fight climate change and save money.
Il faudrait avoir un plan.
So we need an alternative plan to be able to intervene. Does anyone in your party, or do you yourself, have you thought about this? Going above adding an exemption to the carbon tax, what could we implement to reach the same goal? Because the goal with the carbon tax is a noble goal. It is to reduce climate change, reduce the effects of climate change. So what would this look like? Have you thought about it?
I think conservatives have traditionally and will continue to support innovation, and I believe that innovation is a key driver to making sure that we protect our climate. There are so many great ways of doing it. I just don't think an inequitable share of the carbon tax should be put on the shoulders of farmers. Instead, we should be encouraging innovation. My apologies, Mr. Chair.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Merci, Monsieur Perron. And now, Mr. McGregor for 6 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. McGregor.
All right. Thank you so much, Chair. And thank you, Mr. Lawrence, for coming before the committee and being on the hot seat to talk about Bill C-206. I've had a lot of back and forth with legislative drafters over my years as an MP, and I know it's quite a challenge. We're lucky to be aided by such professional staff in the House of Commons who really take our big bright idea and put it into legalese. And of course, there always is a lot of back and forth between an MP and the drafters because, when we write our bills, part of the challenge is also trying to figure out how they will be interpreted. I mean, writing it is kind of like the easy part, but then you have to figure out, when the tire hits the road, will it be interpreted in the right way? And so I just wanted to sort of follow on Mr. Ellis's line of questioning. When you were having your back and forth with the drafters, I know why you picked qualifying farm fuel. I mean, qualifying farm fuel is a very specific term that is used in different sections of the existing act. It's referred to in section 17 and section 38 of the existing statute, showing that the carbon tax is not payable. But when you look at those other definitions, like when it comes to eligible farming activity, eligible farming machinery, can you tell the committee what your back and forth discussions were like with the drafters on whether you should maybe tackle those parts as well? Any insights that they offered?
Yeah, I'm candidly, yeah. So they provided us. I guess I can just say that they said that this would clearly, and we had discussions with them, would clearly include grain drying. And I have to tell you, as looking at it, it's pretty common sense. So when we talked about farming, it is not an exhaustive list. It does not include, for example, planting of crops. I would say that's part of farming. And if you've ever been to a farm and seen a grain dryer, you would say equally that is part of farming. And it does. Eligible farming activity includes the operation of eligible farming machinery. Then we look at the next part of the act that says an industrial machine. So this fits four square. And I honestly, I can't see a reasonable person disagreeing on that. And that's what.
Yeah, so you're quite confident because I read in the media, we had both Minister Bibeau and Minister Wilkinson say that C-206 as written doesn't provide for the relief of fuel costs of grain drying, but you and of course our legislative drafter who helped you with this bill beg to differ on that.
Yeah, exactly. We were in complete agreement with that. And when we look back at the credibility on this, not to be too partisan, but just to be open and candid, at the initial part of the discussion, the Minister Bibeau said that there was no financial impact to the carbon tax on farmers. That it was, I shouldn't say no, but it was insignificant. And now it's moved to the point where, well, now we've got stakeholders agreeing that we need an issue here. Now they've presented the fact that yes, there is a problem, and I applaud the minister for coming that far. However, I once again I look at farming. Farming includes grain drying. I look at industrial machine farming activity. It's includes grain dryers. I just don't see how a reasonable person could come to the conclusion that it doesn't include grain drying.
I come from a province, we have our own provincial carbon tax, so we are not subject to the federal carbon tax. And in fact, our carbon tax was set up by a conservative government. Our conservatives like to call themselves liberals, but that's just how BC operates. But when you're looking at existing provincial precedents, like in BC, propane is not, it is still subject to the carbon tax, but it's free from the motor vehicle tax. Were you looking at any provincial precedents in other jurisdictions to help give you some insight on how to develop this bill?
We did look to BC, particularly with respect to the exemptions that were given, and this actually gave us inspiration as well. That they said as we got support from the NDP, thank you very much, Mr. McGregor, and from the Green Party, we really cast this as a solution that's a common sense agriculture solution that should, I believe, will actually give additional resources to farmers so they can help fight climate change.
And as you said, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of farmers and received a lot of correspondence on C206, and there is pretty much near unanimous support for the bill. I saw that the government is concentrating on making investments in clean technology, energy efficiency, fuel switching, and other technologies on the farms, and I think that's great. But it's going to take some time for those to come into effect. So it seems to me that C206 can kind of act as a bridge until those technologies make themselves available. Wouldn't you agree on that?
100%. I could not agree in any stronger terms that that farmers, the stakeholders group we talked about, they all want to fight climate change. Everyone here wants to fight climate change. However, there just isn't right now an economically feasible alternative. And certainly, let's fund innovation. I would support the government and I support you saying that. But right now, we've got farmers in very difficult times, and so they're desperately needing a break. And this could be a small break that might save the family farm.
Yeah, and I think our committee's next study is going to provide a lot of great testimony on that and hopefully some great recommendations. So that uses my time. Thanks so much, Mr. Lawrence, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. And we'll go to the 5-minute round. And Mr. Epp, I guess you'll share your time with Mr. Lehoux. You can start anytime for 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleague, MP Lawrence, on behalf of the farmers in Chatham-Kent-Leamington and everywhere else for bringing this forward. I'm going to pick up on some comments you made earlier. Minister Bibeau was at committee earlier and did testify, and so stated the average carbon tax charges to farms were between $210 and $819, were very, very insignificant numbers. And that was with the assumed backstop of $50 per ton. Yet the Federation of Independent Business has estimated the cost at $14,000. That was based on the PBO report, which you've touched upon. Can you make a comment on whether are these shifting numbers, just shifting practices in the Ag Committee, or is this, in the agriculture sector, or is this more an increasing awareness? Can you comment on the discrepancies, please?
Yeah, so this is one of the achievements of this private member's bill, as I said, is that we've been able to change the dialogue. Initially, the Minister of Agriculture kept saying this is an insignificant or not a big cost, but the stakeholders, and I have to give it to the farmers, came out and they came out in unison and said, yes, this is a big impact, right? And every stakeholder group that I know of is supporting this legislation because they know the impact that the carbon tax is having on farmers. It's an inequitable distribution. It's part of the economics of being a farmer, is that in often cases they are price takers. So unlike other industries, they can't just push it down the lane. And as everyone knows in the Agriculture Committee, and the margins are very thin, and farmers have to work enormous hours just to pull out an income of this. And so it's whether we're talking about APIS or CFIB, they've all said that this is in the tens of thousands of dollars in cost for farmers. And in a very tight market, in a very difficult year of pandemic, wouldn't it be great if we could extend a little bit of a break to our farmers?
Thank you. Greenhouse sector is a huge one in my riding. I know they have a partial exemption on their fuels, but they actually burn natural gas, scrub their emissions, and recycle CO2 back into their greenhouses. Can you comment on how the whole carbon tax regime takes this into account?
Yeah, so I think once again the key is that we're equitable and we're fair to our farmers, and to be generous. I think maybe this was an oversight in the original Greenhouse Gas Pollution Act that farmers weren't dealt with equitably here. And I'm sure that as we return money back to their pockets, the farmers will not only reinvest in their communities, but they will also invest in agriculture innovation, of which of course farmers have been drivers of. So thank you for the excellent question.
Thank you. I'll cede the rest of my time to my colleague, Mr. Lehoux.
Monsieur Lehoux? Okay.
Oui.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Mr. Perron and Mr. McGregor's questions pointed to alternatives. So I think that it would be very important to speak to this issue if we want to exempt propane and the heating of buildings. This should be exempted. I don't know what you think, Mr. Lawrence, but here in Quebec today, there would be alternative measures like electricity that could be used on a larger scale, but the problem right now is with the regions where farmers need affordable electricity and they don't have access to this affordable electricity. So as long as we don't have alternative measures for farmers, do you think that it's relevant to cast aside the propane tax and the building heating tax?
Prochaine fois, I will receive. Still working on my French, but certainly, yeah. I mean, the reality on the market is right now is that farmers can't all switch over to other more sustainable ways of grain drying, and that's something I think would be great for the committee to study, and I would definitely be interested in hearing what some of the experts. But as Mr. McGregor rightfully pointed out, right now farmers are in a difficult position, and this provides a nice bridge to the future, and it's been done in other places, and including in Canada, that giving farmers this break of just reducing the cost a little bit, just helping them out a little bit. And the reality is too, natural gas and propane are cleaner. Some might say marginally cleaner than diesel and gasoline, but they are. And so why would we not include this exemption when it already exists for at least marginally dirtier fuels?
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Merci, Monsieur Lehoux. Maintenant, Monsieur Drouin.
Merci, Monsieur Lawrence.
5 minutes, Monsieur Drouin. Allez-y.
You have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
And thank you to Mr. Lawrence. And I know I certainly supported your bill, but not for different reasons. I had made a commitment to farmers back home, and I thought I would honor that commitment. But you had a chat with Mr. McGregor with regards to Section F and Section C of eligible farming activity. Somebody could interpret, and the interpretation of the law, I think, is important, and how somebody views that. And how do you not see that the conundrum that could create because of the perhaps the lack of clarity that you present in your bill, or section versus another section, that somebody could take the government to court, I don't know, a David Suzuki's of the world, or other organizations that would say, actually, the government of Canada is wrong, the interpretation is wrong, they bring us to court, and then they side on the particular heating and cooling aspect of the bill. Have you had those conversations with certain groups, or with when you drafted the bill?
No one ever brought that up as a concern until Minister Bibeau did. And let me just be clear here in what the definition says. So it says that the exemption is for eligible farming activity, which means the operation of eligible farming machinery on a farm for farming purposes. And then it says an industrial machine. No one would say that a grain dryer is not an industrial machine. No one would say that a grain dryer is not for farming machinery, and no one would say there's no other purpose. You're not going to go tanning in a grain dryer. This is common sense understanding. And as a lawyer, I can tell you, Francis, anyone can sue anyone for anything at any time. It's a matter of whether it has any weight. But as I said, I want the tone of this to be collaborative. Yeah. And so if the government says to me, you know what, we like your bill, and we want to include grain drying, we want to put it in there, I'm not going to object. Let's make the amendment, and if that's what is the difference between this bill passing and not, let's include it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're discussing this bill, but at the time, if you rewind 2-3 years ago, when this particular act was presented, you and I and all Ontario MPs were not subject to lobbying of this, because the government of the day had presented its own pricing carbon mechanism. So knowing that climate is different and weather is different from region to region, do you not believe that we should be asking the provinces to implement such a system, like a carbon mechanism, especially now that the U.S. has signed on to the Paris Agreement? So we don't have to bring in an Ottawa knows best approach?
I that's not really within the scope of this bill. I appreciate the question. I guess what I can tell you, Mr. Drouin, and thank you for your support, by the way, is that the provincial government did come out, their Minister of Environment, and support Bill C-206, which of course will affect Ontario. So the broader discussion of the carbon tax is really not within the scope of this bill. Happy to have a discussion with you at a later point.
Yeah, but it is the reason why we're here, right? So just to go back to your bill, there's rumors about your leader potentially announcing that he is supportive of a carbon pricing mechanism. And I'm just wondering, have you, and in terms of, we've talked about potential technologies being out there. I know our Minister of Environment has announced that there will be $170 per ton in 10 years, which sends a market signal to industry, to researchers, to innovators out there that, yes, they can potentially present new technologies out there. We've been back and forth in this country over carbon pricing for the past 15 years, 20 years. I mean, at some point, we have to move forward. So I agree with the objectives of the bills, but we all have to play our part in this. So are you advocating for a complete exemption forever, or a partial exemption for the next 10 years or 15 years or 20 years until the market can adapt?
I'll stay squarely within the scope of this legislation. I do appreciate your attempting to get me to comment on things I should not be commenting on inside the scope of this committee. Well done. But with respect to this legislation, it is an exemption on natural gas and propane for qualifying farmers. The bill does not have a date when it will end, just like the greenhouse gas. But what I would say is that this exemption will be more critical as the escalators, the automatic escalators and the carbon tax go increasing year after year after year after year, and they get higher and higher and higher. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. No, that's fine. Thank you, Ms. Lawrence. Merci, Monsieur Drouin. Monsieur Perron, 2 minutes.
Mr. Perrin, you have 2.5 minutes. Go ahead. It's my turn? Okay. Thank you. Mr. Lawrence, I'm going to continue my line of questioning. Yes, we want to reduce greenhouse gases in the medium and long term. If ever the bill is adopted or partially adopted with an amendment, what should we do with the amounts that are paid for the carbon tax?
I'm sorry, I apologize. I didn't quite understand. It might have been the interpretation. I didn't quite.
Qu'est-ce qu'on devrait faire?
What should we do with, Mr. Lawrence, with the amounts that we have collected from farmers for carbon tax? You say there is partial rebates, there's a lot of paper. If ever your bill is not adopted or only partially adopted, what should we do with these monies that we have collected from the carbon tax regime?
Yeah, well, I believe that as much as possible we should have an exemption as opposed to a rebate. And if a rebate ever is in place, that money should go directly to back to Canadian taxpayers. But my preference would be have that exemption. Currently, the carbon tax is not expenditure neutral, meaning Canadians pay more in carbon tax than they receive. That was acknowledged today at Public Accounts Committee.
Est-ce que...
Question. We're here to ask questions, right? We're thinking out loud. Is there a way, is there a middle solution? For example, the tax could be less and the money could go into research and development or direct investment in agriculture. You mentioned, for example, biomass as a solution, which is very expensive. Could there not be something else? Instead of saying no tax, the state will provide support, perhaps there could be some halfway point for this transition.
Thank you for the question. And like I said, it's certainly, I want to have a collaborative and open tone with respect to this legislation. And at the end of the day, I just want to help farmers. I just want to make it a little bit less expensive for farmers. Am I a supporter in research and development? Absolutely. Canada is actually right now lagging behind in the OECD in R&D. In fact, our GDP to R&D spending is below the EU, below the United States, below Australia. And so you raise a great point.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. And now we'll move to Mr. Go ahead, Mr. McGregor.
Thank you, Chair. I was just listening to your exchange with Mr. Drouin. I think, we live in a place and time where you can both be right. I think Mr. Drouin has a point in recognizing where we have to go as the world, and that every sector, including farmers, have to do their part, and I think they are. But I also think, you can be right in recognizing that right now, farmers do have these costs and they don't have alternative options to them. So this is what I see as sort of a bridge benefit, and something that's going to allow them to respond to some of these unexpected costs. Because if we do get another really wet fall and farmers are having to dry their grain, that's going to be a cost that they just can't escape. I'm curious though, and I know you don't have a lot of time to give me an answer, but when you said you would be open to an amendment in your bill that would cover barn heating, because I live in a part of Canada, we don't have brutal cold weather like they do on the prairies, and I can only imagine what the costs are to keep an animal barn heated so that your animals aren't freezing to death. But you may not be able to give me the answer right now, but would you be able to maybe submit what your proposed amending language would be to the committee for us to consider?
Yeah, certainly no problem. And we have had already discussions. I don't have that amendment drafted, but we've had discussions with the legislative, and would be happy to report back to the committee on what the amendment might look like. And I agree with everything you're saying as sage counsel, that both Mr. Drouin and I can be right. I don't really want this bill to be a discussion about the carbon tax in total. I just want to help farmers.
Okay, well, that's it for me, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. And now Mr. Steinley for 5 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Steinley.
Thank you very much, and thank you for my colleague for being here. And I've heard a lot of discussion around some of the ideas of what could we do to help farmers, and Phil saying that he just wants to put forward a bill that helps farmers. So in that vein, I would ask Phil, during your consultations, you've done a wide range of consultations, how many farmers have said that this exemption is not needed?
None. Even farmers who don't specifically dry grain or maybe aren't affected by it specifically, they all know people who are, and they just see the impact that it's had on farmers. It's part of the economy of agriculture, right? Because there are so many price takers in the farming industry that when you increase the cost of inputs, it makes them less competitive. And quite frankly, many countries across this world don't have the same price on pollution. They don't have the same carbon tax that they're fighting against. So it makes it that much more difficult. And then even people outside the agriculture industry, for everyone's interested in having lower food costs, particularly during the pandemic. We've seen inflation across many of our major grocery store chains, and we want to keep food costs down because that affects, quite frankly, the most vulnerable of Canadians the most.
Thank you very much. Having a conversation, once again, listening to my colleagues and saying, well, we need to engage farmers and make sure they realize that they need to be environmentally friendly, and we need to do our part, which I agree with. The thing that I would say to my colleagues on this meeting right now, and to you, Mr. Lawrence, is farmers do their part. Ranchers do their part. We went from, I remember on my farm, my father and uncle, we used to summer fall and harrow, and you could see the topsoil fly about 10 miles down the road. And we went to zero tillage seeding, and that was great for soil conservation. When farmers find innovations that are good for their soil and good for the environment, they do it on their own. They don't need this approach where I fought back on this when we were talking about our next study, is you don't need to tell farmers to do better, because they are constantly looking for innovation and abilities to do better, whether it's to have more fuel efficient vehicles. farmers and ranchers and producers want to do that because it helps their bottom line, and they know it's good for environment. It's soil conservation. They want to do that because they know the soil is their livelihoods, and they want to have that soil as fertile and healthy as possible. So I know you don't want to get into the whole debate around the carbon tax, but this exemption, I would tell my colleagues, is for farmers to be able to maybe put some extra money in innovation, to put some more money in their pockets so they can maybe experiment with another crop so that it can have more nutrients in the soil. So I'd ask my colleagues farmers don't need an Ottawa knows best approach. Sometimes we maybe need to take a step back and listen to what farmers and producers are doing instead of always thinking we need to lead the pack. Maybe sometimes we need to take a look at what these producers are doing across the country. So just a comment on that, Mr. Lawrence.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Steinley, and thank you for your wise words. Yeah, I think it's a long-held belief of mine that if Canadians, and in this case particularly farmers, keep the money in their own jeans, they're more capable of making those appropriate decisions than Ottawa ever will be. I will bet on the wisdom and the environmentalism and the sustainability of our farmers any day. Like I said, I live in farm country. These are amongst the most intelligent, hardworking people that our country is blessed with. And yes, I agree with your sentiments exactly. If we leave those in the blue jeans of our farmers, if we leave that money in the blue jeans of farmers, they will do a better job of spending it than Ottawa ever could.
Thank you. And just to circle around, Mr. Ellis had a conversation around grain drying, and obviously just your comments around the ability for us to exempt some of the fuels for grain drying. How do you see that panning out? We did have, like you said, colloquially, the harvest from hell here in Western Saskatchewan. And it's, when it's wet, we need to get that crop off and get it in the bins and then dry it when it's in the bins. I know, Alistair, we do have a bit colder winters, so barn heating when we're calving here when it's snowing in mid-March is pretty important for our livestock producers. So just a little conversation around that, Philip, and how we can make sure we're helping those farmers that have to dry their grain and make sure the barns are heated for calving season, lambing season, whichever it may be.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Anyone who's been to a farm and has seen a grain dryer knows that it's part of the integral part of a farm. So to call it, like, if in fact a grain farmer in the autumn of 2019 didn't have a grain dryer or the ability to dry grain, they would have no product.
Thank you.
And so, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Drouin, for up to 5 minutes. You go ahead.
Great. Thank you again, Mr. Lawrence, for being with us. And I just want to make one comment. We're not trying to penalize any farmer. What we're trying to change is the landscape of certain carbon-intensive suppliers to our farmers. And I think that's a distinction. And I just have actually one question for you, Mr. Lawrence. I know you, in your exchange with Mr. McGregor, you said you were working on a particular amendment. Just in terms of timing, do you know when that amendment may or may not be ready for us to consider?
I am at the behest of the committee there. So you'll have to you tell me when the scheduling. I believe that we're not scheduled to return for a little while. So, but next time we're discussing that, I would probably be able to table it. But what I would say is, you know what, if the government wants to, if their only objection to my bill is the fact that it doesn't explicitly say grain drying, which, I mean, I think common sense would tell you it includes it. You can ask any farmer. But if that's the case, the good news is you guys are in government. You can introduce a bill tomorrow, and trust me, you'll have my support, and I would suspect the rest of my parties. So let's get this done. If that's the position of the Liberal Party of Canada, let's help farmers. Let's not just start parsing small words so that we can delay things.
Yeah, the only comment I would make is you better have a conversation with your House leader, because right now legislation is moving slow as molasses. But listen, it's great to have you, and I appreciate you coming in front of our committee. Thank you.
Perfect. And I couldn't get through a committee without saying, well, if you guys didn't prorogue because of the WE scandal, we would be further along in the legislation. So that completes our
That's way out of
discussion.
C206.
I think we're getting into some debates, and so we better end it here. This is all the time we have for this. But I want to thank Mr. Lawrence for being here to explain his bill, and we shall now end the meet or suspend the meeting and go into in camera for our business session to look at the coming weeks ahead. So everybody needs to log out, and then you will come back on for the in camera session. Okay, so we'll see you on the other side. Thanks.